And who would play? Who would play me? Listen, it's got to be Danny DeVito, hasn't it? Got to be.
So, welcome to the first ever Welcome Football podcast. So, I'm absolutely over the moon to, be joined by Billy Davies, who is a former Premier League manager who actually managed just under 500 games in the UK. So, thank you for coming on the podcast, Billy, and welcome.
James, it's a pleasure to join you, and very much looking forward to talking football, and of course many other subjects that we may discuss. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. So, I suppose first of all, would you just be able to introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, my name is Billy Davies, and I am a football manager and a great student of football, and I'm absolutely delighted to have joined James on the podcast.
So, getting straight into it then, what is something about managing a Premier League team or, any team, at a high level that fans never see or would even understand?
But what goes on, James, as you can imagine, and when you first join a football club, there's always, as everyone knows, there's always a short, mid and long-term plan. And you sit down with the board and you agree what their objectives are. You sit down and agree what the targets are. And then you start to do what you've got to do. You start to obviously build the team, develop the club, advise the board, and then take on that challenge of trying to get as much success as possible for the club. More importantly, try to get the best out of the players, who are the ones that produce the results. And then, of course, try to get the bums on seats and get the fans very excited and happy with performance.
Yeah, I suppose the fans only see, it's changing a little bit now with a lot more behind the scenes stuff, but fans only see the press conferences, 20 minutes or, the games, right? They don't see all the behind the scenes stuff, like you said.
Well, it's very difficult, isn't it? It's, as I said before, there's a lot goes on, James, between when you join a club and then what takes place on a day-to-day basis. There's never a dull moment in football management, I could tell you. It's very much head down and 24 hours a day. You're focusing on many, many different aspects of the club and the players and the opposition and the scouting, the medical department, the sports science department. I could go on and on, James, on and on.
Yeah, I imagine it is very consuming, right?
Yeah, it's got to be. It's that type of job that where there's so many different aspects to it, and then you've just got to obviously focus on getting results. The most important thing is in this results-driven business is picking up results and getting performances from your team, and getting the fans want to come and watch, obviously, the match and so on. So it's very intense. It's very enjoyable. I wouldn't swap it for the world. And it's something that I really do love to be involved in.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. So just some quick fire questions, and then we've got, some questions there we can expand on the answers and stuff. So best away fans that you've ever witnessed?
Best away fans. Oh, I'll tell you what, there's many, many excellent grounds in England. You could go on and on about big club, big support, but then again, you could go to so-called lesser club with not so many in the ground, but it becomes more fierce. A great example of that is I love going to Millwall. I think Millwall has got real character at it. There's when you go there, it's just non-stop from the terracings into the technical area, and then of course onto the pitch. But no, I've got to say, going to Ellen Road is a wonderful place to be. I love when I was a manager at Preston, I love going to Derby County, for example. Going to the City Ground also is a fantastic atmosphere. But then again, James, I can say the same about West Brom, Southampton, Norwich. These are just fantastic football clubs. And in the Championship, I think it's the third toughest league in the world. Then you would expect that there's tremendous atmospheres at these grounds, and they've all got their own little traditions and their own way they go about things. And I've got to say that there's just so many, James, that it's just excellent to be involved in. From the very top, so-called big club, all the way down to the so-called minnows in the league, it's always difficult.
Yeah, 100%. So, off the top of your head, could you name the best player that you've worked with?
That's a great question. A question that I get asked very regular. I've
Yeah.
dealt with lots and lots of players. As you know, football clubs can sometimes become a revolving door, depending on what happens when you take over and what the situation is. But no, I've got to say, James, that I've had many great players at every club. I could name you, I'd be here to 10 o'clock tonight, naming you the good ones that I've worked with. And I'm not trying to avoid your question. I just think there's been too many to mention at every single club. From back to front, there's been so many good players. And it's been an absolute pleasure working with so many top talents at every single club.
Would you say there was obviously that was the best, but would you say there was a favorite or one that you really enjoyed working with the most, or you know?
Well, I think each club had its own challenge. From when I stepped into Motherwell, uh, that had its own challenge in itself in Scottish football. There's obviously a great battle between the so-called Old Firm and the rest, and then there's the so-called big boys underneath the Old Firm. That's the Hibs and the Hearts and the Aberdeen, the Dundee Uniteds. These are the so-called next top clubs, and then the rest of the guys are all fighting. So that was a challenge. But when you go for example, you go to Preston North End, what I had there was a great experienced squad, top class professionals, a real energy about Preston in the dressing room, the type of player. That was completely different to Derby. Derby was much more of an aging squad, no disrespect to anyone, but it was more of an aging squad. Vastly experienced players. Many have seen it and done it in the past. And there was a different management style to that, James. And then Forest, the first time, was the youngest squad in the Championship, a very inexperienced squad, a team full of great learners of the game, if you like, young boys that were running around that were just needing direction and help. But an excellent team that just needed some tweaks and some changes. And then, of course, lastly, to Forest the second time, you join that club. There's been a lot of investment spent before I come in. There's a great intent by the owner to get to, as he said, you wanted the third star on the jersey. And of course, that being the European Cup. And then, of course, there's a different style of management and a different approach again. So all clubs, James, have got their own traditions, their own challenges, but every single one I thoroughly enjoy.
So, would you say you prefer, the old school, the manager role? I think a lot of clubs now are adopted the head coach with a sporting director. Would you prefer the manager or the head coach role?
Well, I see myself as a football manager.
Yeah.
I understand the changes in the game, but whether it's a head coach, whether it's a manager, it doesn't really matter what the title is. I think it was the great Alec Ferguson that said, a manager or head coach without control is not a manager. And I think that's where Fergie and the Arsene Wengers and these guys have got it right. You have to have the ability to work with a team every single day, and then, of course, advise the board in relation to the financial constraints that they may be in, advise the direction of where you see the way to go and getting better results and adding better quality. But no, I don't think it matters, James. The bottom line, whether it's a head coach or a manager, you've got to get results. You've got to advise the board. You've got to work with the board, and you've got to go in there and motivate players and make people better, put bums on seats, and more importantly, try and turn the economics around at every club.
Yeah, which I can imagine is very, very difficult. So off the top of your head, again, can you think of maybe one of like a funny story, of during your time at management? Does anything like stand out?
Oh, there's lots of funny stories. I mean, listen, I could be here again to next week telling you funny stories, but we had a really funny one at Forest the first time, sorry, second time. And I think it was to do with, there was a rule that the players couldn't park their cars in the staff car parking area.
Yeah.
And I think it was Jamie Mackey that turns up with his little smart car. And of course, Jamie, being Jamie, decided he'll park the car anywhere he likes. So Jamie parked his car in one of the staff spaces. The players in the staff seen that happening, and we decided to go out as a group, and we physically moved the car, James. We moved his smart car away to another area of the parking area. And then, of course, when we came to the Friday meeting, we took the video of this event. We video recorded Jamie Mackey's smart car in the staff car parking space. We obviously had a discussion and asked Jamie Mackey if he wanted some legal representation because he has been found guilty of parking his car in a place that he wasn't supposed to. Jamie Mackey decided that he would get away with it, and he denied it, as you can imagine. We then put Jamie Mackey on the platform in the dressing room. We stood him on the chair, and we put the video on, and we gave him the video evidence. And as you can imagine, James, the whole room erupted with the players and the staff. It was such a funny moment with Jamie Mackey's little smart car, moving it, him parking it, the staff and players moving it to a different place, Mackey deciding that he didn't think he'd get caught, us recording that event, and then, of course, at the end of the week, we have that team meeting. We put on the video, we give him the video and picture evidence. We put him on the platform, and it was just such a wonderful, wonderful event that morning, and the Friday morning in the training ground. It was such a funny time. There's so many, James, I could go on and on here.
Yeah.
And that's one that was very memorable.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Did you know that Jamie Mackey is currently a trainee financial advisor?
That doesn't surprise me.
No.
He's always been well switched on, Jamie. Has been, I've got to say, James, he's been well switched on. But I see him on Sky Sports. He's doing a grand job in Sky. And he was an excellent player to work with.
Yeah, I remember him very well. So, obviously, sticking on the subject of humour, who's the funniest person that you've met in football, apart from yourself?
Well, I don't know if I could come into that category, James. I think there's certainly been plenty of funny ones over the time. I've got to say, Seth Johnson at Derby was a very funny lad.
Yeah.
The famous Leeds United, very expensive midfield player called Seth Johnson. A very funny lad. And you go to Preston, David Nugent, who's a very funny lad. At Preston, a real funny character. And then, of course, moving on to Forest, the first time, again, there was some tremendous funny boys. Let me think, James. Let me just have a think. David Nugent, Seth Johnston, Lee Camp was a funny boy. He was a real funny boy to deal with, and never a dull moment. But again, James, they've all got their own personalities. Dexter Blackstock was a privilege to work with, for example. But Dexter was a one-liner. You always got a one-liner there to Dexter. And he certainly knew how to come at you. And was a great lad to have in the dressing room. But again, James, at every club, we did have 3 or 4 people that were just a cut above the rest when it came to funny stories, funny behaviours, and the things that they brought to the dressing room.
Yeah, I think it's about having that good balance as well, isn't it? You know, you couldn't have 20, 22 comedians, but having that balance is important, right?
Very much so, and that's what you need. You need to let them be who they are, and the funny ones are just whatever, James, as you know, they're just naturally funny. You don't tell them to be funny. They're just from the minute they walk in to the minute they walk out the door. You just there's never a dull moment, and I can say that about Nuge at Preston. Nuge was, along with 1 or 2 others, Nuge was completely and utterly off his head.
So, what is the one moment that you wish that you could relive in your career?
No, I don't have any regrets of any moments that I could relive, because you make decisions at that time under those circumstances, and as a lot goes on and about making decisions. Hindsight's a wonderful thing. We can all sit back and say, I could have and I should have, but That's not how life works. You've got to be in that moment, James. It's got to be at that time making that decision with what you're facing. And there's a lot, you face a lot. You do have a lot of discussion with other staff members before you make that decision.
Yeah.
And of course, there's also financial implications you've got to consider, board implications, staff implications, family implications, for example. So I don't sit back and say that there's any particular moment, because hindsight would make us all great people. But when you're in that moment at that time, you make the decision that you feel is right and what is the right decision for the club, for the owners, and for the team.
Yeah, 100%. So when you stopped playing, did you always want to be a manager?
Well, funny enough, from my mid-20s, when I was a player, for whatever reason, James, I got heavily involved in coaching courses and coaching. I used to go out and during the week as a professional player at 20, probably 24, 25. I used to go out and I think it started with one of my friends playing for a team and asking me to come along and do a coaching session. And then from there it grew, James. I started to coach amateur teams, junior teams, boys club teams, community teams, council teams, women's team. And twice a week, 3 times a week, I would go out there in my mid-20s and do a lot of coaching. At that point, I was doing a lot of coaching courses. I then get involved professionally as a player. I was asked to go in and take the under-15s at my first club, Motherwell. I then went from 15s to under-20s. And then from there, I moved on a very good pathway, in my opinion. I then moved on to becoming the manager, down to Preston to be first team coach, assistant manager, and then manager of Preston, and then thereafter manager of Derby, and twice at Nottingham Forest. So I think the message, James, I really did enjoy my pathway. I got great experience as a young player working with all these different people. I then got involved very early in coaching courses, and then got the opportunity as a professional to work with the professional young players, and that led me into what I've done thereafter. So really enjoyable pathway, James.
What do you say to people who say that you need to have played at a fairly high level if you want to go into the coaching side of it?
No, that's absolute nonsense. I think, it's all about the love for the game. It's all about, like myself, I'm a very big student of football, a very big student of other sports. I do believe that as long as you've got that passion to be involved in the game, whether you've been a professional or not, there's many professionals, James, that don't have the passion or the commitment to become a coach or a manager. That's understandable. That's their choice. And the same can be said for people that haven't played. But the most important thing is that you've got to have the passion for the game. You've got to have the love for the game, and you've got to have the love to be a student of the game and go and learn from other people, go and educate in the coaching courses. And I've got to say, James, that's one of the things that I'm doing at the minute. Uh, I'm doing a lot of mentoring for young coaches, young managers. I got a lot of calls from different people, managers in junior teams, managers in professional teams, coaches all over the country. And I do thoroughly enjoy the mentoring side, helping these young guys, because, as I said, it's not about whether you played professionally or not. It's about having that love for the game.
Yeah, 100%. So at Work and Football, we, help university students get into, get into the industry, whether it's coaches, analysts, scouts. So what advice would you have to those, up and coming coaches who want to make it full time in football?
The advice that I would give them is quite simple. Don't rush into things too quickly. Don't lose your patience. Be patient. Learn your trade. Learn to work with different standards of player. It's a great education what I had. Continue with your personal development in relation to your coaching courses and your badges and all that kind of thing. Building qualifications, very important. But I think patience to go through the correct stages Don't go from one to the next. That jump can sometimes be too quick and too early. So make sure you're going through the necessary steps in relation to learning your trade, learning what coaching's all about, building those qualifications that you require to go through, and then of course all the other different aspects in and around the job games is very important. You learn that as well.
Yeah. So there's so many of these students now who are going to university and doing sports coaching, sports development and coaching. How can a coach stand out, in today's world, would you say?
Well, again, players are not stupid, and you've got to the minute you walk into a football club, you've got to gain the respect of the players. And sometimes players can recognise very early when people aren't quite ready to take over that level of player, no matter how many qualifications you may have, no matter what you've done in relation to courses and badges. Players are very switched on at all levels, and what you've got to do is you've got to go into these dressing rooms and you've got to convince these players that you know what you're talking about. They've got your respect, and they can see that you're the right man for this job to make them better and help the team win matches, etc. So I think that's very important.
Yeah, and I suppose the experience, right? You've got to get that experience coaching as soon as you're at university because, like you say, players could potentially tell if a coach isn't ready. So that experience is vital.
But I've got to say, James, that in my mid-20s, I never realised the importance of me going out 2 or 3 times a week, coaching all these different standards of player, boys and girls, decent standards, not so good standards, different fitness levels, different shapes and sizes of people. The education that I got through that period, I've got to say, was absolutely fantastic. And then, of course, moving into the professional side of coaching the young players, that was also a very educational time for me. Moving up to the 20s is a different approach, a different mentality, a different experience of player. And there's a different approach needed when you go to that kind of level. And then when you become a first team coach or an assistant manager, then there's a more responsibility on what you say, how you behave, how you conduct yourself. Then, of course, once you become manager, then you've really got to stamp your authority and get that respect from the players because they know what you are, who you are, and you've obviously come through a very good pathway.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, really insightful. So coming back to you and your current situation, what are your current career ambitions?
Well, over the last number of years, I had been doing a lot of building qualification, and I've been doing a lot of travel to clubs. I've been watching games all over the UK. I've enjoyed the club visits that I've done. I've been doing a ton of continued personal development. I done at Liverpool University. I done a diploma in football management, which was over a year. That took me to get that. In the coming months, there's another more academic course for me to go on. I'm looking forward to it with the League Managers Association. And as a big student, James, I've got to say that watching the games, building qualification, not just in football. I'm talking first aid. I'm talking disability football. I'm talking women's football. I'm talking head injury, heart problems, you name it. Other sports, listening to other people in other sports talk about how they manage and how they coach and how they handle certain situations. So for me, the last number of years have all been about learning, educating, preparing myself. And I've got to say that I have never been more prepared today for the next step that I've got going back into football management.
Yeah. And would you say you're actively looking for that next role, or is it more a case of doing, more continued professional development? And then if something comes, you're open to it, or are you sort of, scouting for that at the moment?
No, I think it's doing your job. What I'll do at the minute, I am available, and people know that I am available to work. I'm not like a player, James. No matter how many years out of football some people may be, or even months, you never lose what you've got in relation to a coach or a manager. different a player. A player's got to be physically fit and physically conditioned.
Yep.
But for me, stepping on the grass is like riding a bike. You go back on the grass and you pick up from where you left off. So, no, I think for me, I think people know that I'm available and ready to go back into work. What I will continue to do is I will continue to watch games. I will continue to do club visits. I will continue to do the building qualifications and continue personal development. I'll continue to watch this game very closely with tactics and formations and everything else. And eventually, at some point, I'm sure that some club will want to bring in a manager that's got not a bad track record, James.
Yeah, I agree. So you touched upon it a minute ago briefly, but how much football do you watch nowadays? Like whether that's, at home in front of a TV or, getting out to games and watching those in person?
Well, I'm getting out to probably 2 to 3 games a week live.
Oh,
I've been sent. I've been sent games to watch players. For example, I get many requests for people asking me if I would give an opinion on a team shape and pattern and what I felt. An opinion on, could you look at this potential target of ours? There's a DVD. There's a bit of footage. I do that as well. So I've got to say, James, between watching the games on television, getting out to live games, getting games sent to me to watch. I love watching the foreign games, the Spanish football, the German football, the Italian football. I love to watch many, many different standards of teams and players. And it's 24 hours a day. If it's not watching that, then I'm putting on a lot of presentations, doing a lot of presentations. But I thoroughly, as I said earlier, I really enjoy the mentoring and helping people. That's very important. And what I'm starting to get involved in as well is a lot of charity stuff. I've been asked by the Scottish Football Trust, would I come in and be an ambassador for them? So I'm going to take on 1 or 2 ambassador roles to try and, what they're trying to do, James, is they're trying to improve facilities in the Scottish Football Partnership Trust. I will certainly be an ambassador for that, because I do believe that the best facilities that we can get will certainly help the development of young players, young coaches, and the standard of the game.
Yeah, 100%. That's a great role. So do you have a final message for those coaches? You give some unbelievable advice, but like a final message to those young coaches who are coming up.
Be patient. Don't try and get ahead of yourself too quickly. Don't look to the stars and think that because you've done a badge, you can now go and manage Barcelona. It doesn't work like that. You've got to make sure you go through the steps and the stages, gain that experience at that level. Let the players see that you're very knowledgeable on how to handle yourself and how to project yourself and how, what you can do on and off the pitch, which is important. Build from there into the next level, James. Move things forward slowly. Keep learning, keep educating. And as I said before, patience is the key. You'll get there eventually. You'll get to that level by your study, your love for the game and your commitment. But don't run before you walk. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So final question, if your career was a film, what would the title of the film be and who would play you?
The title of the film would be It Is What It Is.
Love that.
That would be the title.
Great title.
And who would play me? Listen, it's got to be Danny DeVito, hasn't it? Got to be.
Yeah. Love that. I'll tune in and watch that.
I'm sure you enjoy it. It will be very interesting.
Yeah, no, 100%. So, Billy, thank you so much, mate, for coming on. I know that will be of use to, coaches or anyone who wants to work in football, and obviously really interesting to hear your story as well. So, yeah, if you did enjoy this podcast, please leave a follow, please leave a comment, a like, all that stuff. And yeah, just again, Billy, thank you so much for coming on.
James, can I just say to you that it's been a pleasure joining you on the podcast. I do wish all the listeners the very, very best in their career. Once again, I'm here if anybody would like to ask a question or get some advice. I'd be delighted to help them. And good luck, everybody. I hope it goes well, and hopefully see you all standing on the touchline in the very near future. Doing what you do best. All the very best, and thank you.